very much. I call this special council meeting of Thursday, May 14th to order. The special council meeting is convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw in the Vancouver Charter. The special council meeting has been called to adopt terms of reference for the Council COVID-19 Recovery Committee. First, we want to acknowledge we're on the unceded traditional territories of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, and thank them for having care for these lands. And just actually got off a call with Chief Leah from Tsleil-Waututh, and so we're continuing to work in partnership as we continue to build this great city together. And everything's okay over on their patch. Also want to take a moment to recognize the immense contributions of the City of Vancouver staff who work hard every day to make our city an incredible place to live, work, and play. Clerk, can we have the roll call, please?
Mayor Stewart is in the chair. Councillor Carr.
Here.
Councillor DiGenova. She's not on the line yet. Councillor Fry.
Sorry, I'm here.
Councillor Swanson. Councillor Swanson, are you on the line? I see her, so I'm going to acknowledge that. Thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Present.
Councillor Wiebe.
Present.
Councillor Boyle.
Present.
Councillor Dominato is
Present.
not on. There you are. Thank you. Councillor Blanc.
Present. Present.
And Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Stewart.
Thanks very much. The public is urged to listen to the proceedings via the city's website and to follow along on Twitter at VanCityClerk for updates on progress of the meeting. Any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website. The link to that forum will be tweeted out on at VanCityClerk. Our item of business for this special council meeting is to approve the terms of reference for the Council COVID-19 Recovery Committee, as this motion is a motion of council. Could either Councillor Carr or Councillor Dominato introduce the item? And we're just
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is that?
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, please. Yeah, please go ahead.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'll try and be brief. Everybody's seen the original draft of the terms of reference, but I'll go through that if necessary. I want to just start by saying that the committee and terms of reference that we see in front of us arise from a motion that I moved, seconded by Councillor Dominato, and passed by Council. That would be to establish a COVID-19 Response and Recovery Committee of Council. To remind everyone, the reasoning behind it was the COVID-19 emergency, which we were embedded in, unprecedented in impact on our city. We were at the point of dealing with immediate response at that time of bringing the motion forward. The response was by necessity of the emergency state staff driven through the Emergency Operations Center. Council had been receiving regular briefings. We had the ability to ask questions and make some suggestions, but it was a rather informal process, and I believe there was a very deep desire of Council to be as useful as possible, especially as we moved into recovery planning. So once the motion was passed, it needed to proceed with terms of reference. A team was formed at that point, consisting of myself and Councillor Dominato. Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I seem to have some feedback. Is that, it's gone away?
I think it's gone.
Yeah, I don't know what it came from. So the team was formed of myself and Councillor Dominato, who moved and seconded the motion. Anita Zenker, the Chief of Staff to the Mayor, yourself, Karen Levitt, who was heading up as the Deputy City Manager, heading up the COVID recovery process, and Alex Popovich, her assistant. And our goal was to simply draft the terms of reference to be considered by Council so that we could establish then the committee formally and move on with getting some business done. The terms of reference were circulated to Council, I remind you, on May 5th, so almost 10 days ago, in preparation for being presented and discussed by all staff, by all Council, and receiving your input at a meeting that was held on May 8th. The responses that you gave at that meeting on May 8th informed changes to the terms of reference, which were drafted by Karen Levitt and I think Alex Popovich as well. And I want to draw your attention to the fact that there were a couple of things that were raised fairly consistently at that Friday, May 8th meeting. One was concerned about the working groups and how they would operate. And just a lot of different opinions and ideas around that, and whether they were necessary and whether they would not enable the actual whole committee to be nimble because of just the process around them. So those have been removed from these terms of reference in front of you. And secondly, to shorten a reporting timeline. There was concerns raised by you as councillors about the progress happening on recovery. It was starting to move forward, and I think everyone felt that a report back in fall would have been potentially too late, and so the reporting timeline for initial report is the end of July. And then we moved to set up this special council meeting to consider these terms of reference. So I can go through those. I've highlighted the changes. There is actually one other change that does need to be made. I've just been alerted to that, Mr. Mayor, and I don't know if we want to wait to do that. You're chairing this, but it is to change the advance public notice for all of the upcoming meetings of the committee from 2 to 6 days to a 6-day advance public notice. But other than that, the terms of reference standards have been circulated, and happy council to either go through them with you or to just receive questions that you may have about them and proceed along a decision.
Great, thank you, Councillor Carr. This is a special council meeting, but the same rules apply in the sense that we would just need to have the motion moved and seconded, and then we just go through debate with amendments. Is that correct, Clerk? I got the right sense there?
Yes, that's correct, Mayor Stewart.
Mayor Stewart,
Great.
I'd be happy to move the motion.
Okay, I have a seconder.
Hardwick, second.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hardwick. Okay, so now, Council, we are in the regular kind of debate and decision period where you have able to exercise all your rights in terms of the council member rights. So I actually don't have my timer screen yet. I'm still getting some assistance with that. So I'll ask the clerk to help me with the speaker list. And we could start with the first speaker.
Yes.
Would anybody like to speak?
Councillor Swanson is on the list.
Okay, Councillor Swanson, so you have up to 5 minutes, and I'll be timing you manually, and I'll give you, when there's a minute left, I'll let you know. So please go ahead. Probably need to unmute Councillor Swanson.
Councillor Swanson, are you on the line?
Councillor Swanson? Okay, we can come back to Councillor Swanson. Is there another speaker, another councillor clerk?
Yes, Councillor Boyle is next.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Boyle, please go ahead up to 5 minutes whenever you're ready, and I'll give you a minute warning.
Okay, great. I just want to ask a question of the mover of the motion through you, Mr. Mayor, which is I'm curious to hear more about a proposal of how we would choose outside experts. It's my understanding if the report is for July and the committee meets every 2 weeks, we would have about 4 meetings of this group, and so I'm just wondering how those decisions get made.
Over to you,
Yes,
Carr.
thank you. So the terms of reference require that this one of our first items of business is to actually decide upon the questions we want to have answered. So what would be the questions that would drive the work of this committee? That would be done at the first meeting. And my suggestion, if we follow the original motion, which is that the chairing of the this is the one that was passed by council already, that the chairs would rotate from person to person in the order of seniority by the deputy mayor roster. So I would chair the first meeting. My suggestion for that would be that we, for the first meeting, that we would do the set those questions, and then out of those questions, like what do we want to accomplish? What is it that we really have as goals around this this committee? The second part of that would be what would be the specific topics that we may want to focus on to get us towards achieving those goals, and related to those topics would be the experts. So my my hope is that, number one, that out of this meeting, I would request that all of you think about those three questions, the topics arising, and the speakers, and that that those be sent in advance of that first meeting, so that there's some ability of myself as the chair of that meeting to pull those together, so that we could, in terms of the topics, and see how much consistency or even potential consensus there may be in that, and then reach a decision at that very first meeting around how we're going to proceed from there in terms
Okay,
of topics.
I'm going to just save the rest of my time. Thanks for this answer.
Sorry.
That's okay, but I'm going to save the rest of my time and just listen and hear from others before I say more on this. Thank you.
Thank you. On to Councillor Swanson, up to 5 minutes.
Mia Stewart, I think we're still trying to sort out her audio. Maybe we can put her back on the list after.
Okay, we'll do that. And let me just open the panel here. So we'll move on to Councillor Bly, up to 5 minutes. Go ahead, Councillor Bly. Councillor Bly, unmute perhaps. Oh, somebody's on. Councillor Bly. Okay, we'll move on to Councillor Kirby-Yung then. Councillor Kirby-Yung, up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions. My first one sort of following up a bit on Councillor Boyles, and I'm looking at number 4, structure and membership, and specifically F, and if either of the sort of the two councillors on the working group would like to address this. And it's related to, it says the meetings of the CCRC will be open to the public, but will not receive speakers with the exception of invited presentations. And so further to that discussion point, I'm wondering how you see potentially vested stakeholders being able to participate. So for example, the motion that council passed yesterday on patios or more flexible outdoor dining, a number of restaurants in the sector would be interested. So I can see for an invited presentation, perhaps you would have had in that particular case someone like BCRFA coming to speak. So it says not members of the public, but do you see vested stakeholders being able to be invited as part of invited presentations, or would you see once the recommendation went to council that then we would follow our normal process and individuals or businesses that were impacted by something would then be able to speak in that way?
Councillor Carr?
Yes, both, Councillor Kirby-Yung. Number one, I think that in our meetings, that is of this committee, you know that this committee is not vested with decision-making authority, but gathering information, hearing from people and experts, and then move that information through to recommendations. To go back to regular council, where the public in general can speak to any item. By being, so in the case of invited presentations versus speakers from the general public, the difference being speakers from the general public are those who can just sign up to an item as they can in all regular council meetings. Invited presentations would be, apropos of your example, a councillor saying, look, I really think we need from the BC RFA, or we need to hear from representatives, and I would suggest these ones from the Arts and Culture Group. I don't actually foresee that there will be a huge amount of controversy necessarily arising. I think there will be some consensus that would emerge around who we actually really do need to hear from.
Okay, just because I want to be conscious of my time. So the committee, you would see the committee being open to saying, for example, we want to hear in the case of arts, an arts sort of leading organization, potentially 1 or 2 operators. Is that
Oh,
what you're hearing? There might
Rosemary,
be
I'm
flexibility
wanting
for
to get
that.
Hal.
Sorry, Jean.
Sorry.
Councillor Swanson,
Uh,
we just could you use the chat on WebEx? Thanks very much. Sorry for the interruption. Please go ahead, councillors. Resume your conversation.
No problem. So just confirming, like the committee, you would see the committee being opening to that. For example, if we had a couple of representative voices, just to help inform a
Yes.
strategy or recommendation. Okay,
I do.
great. Awesome. And then also on 4C, I noticed that versus the earlier draft that was circulated, it had previously said, I think I'm correct, it's saying the chair would be rotated consistent with the roster of deputy mayor. And I see that 4C says it will rotate among council members over time, but I'm not seeing the how that would be determined, who it would be and how that process would happen. Could you clarify?
Yes, actually, I think I mentioned in my introductory comments that the direction I believe we should follow is that which was already voted on by council, which is yes, it will rotate, but it will rotate as per the original motion, which is in the roster of the deputy mayor.
Okay, so do you have an amendment to that? Because I did hear you say you had an amendment for the notice for the meeting, but do you have an amendment for that specifically?
Yes. No, but okay. I think that, but I'd be happy to receive that amendment. I think that's that would be one to potentially put that right in here.
Okay, that's it for questions for me for now. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Councillor Swanson, have we got you? Councillor Swanson, are you on mute perhaps?
I'm here.
Great, we can hear you. Go ahead, up to 5 minutes.
In order to get you to hear me once, I have to hear you guys each twice. Anyway.
Oh, okay, maybe that.
Hopefully Hal is working
on
this. But what I would like is, could the document that we're discussing be put up on the screen?
Yes, we can do that. Did you have any specific questions?
Just that one.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, and on Councillor Hardwick, up to 5 minutes.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Carr, a couple of questions. You explained the process is, first of all, identifying the key question areas, then looking at topics arising from, and then determining speakers from that exercise. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Questions, topics arising, and then speakers. And then in terms of the public in the neighborhoods, I know we're talking about speakers that relate to specific questions or themes. Do you see also a role in this with council intersecting with the public?
Absolutely. I mean, for one, it's not inconceivable that one of the topics that gets suggested is as we move into recovery, and I believe our manager of planning, Gail Kelly, raised it at a meeting that we've just been through in regular council to look at complete neighborhoods. And what does recovery look like in terms of the development of complete neighborhoods? So one would assume that would be a perfect opportunity for people to come in on that kind of a topic.
And timely, if you saw Jennifer Keesmet's article in Maclean's talking about that very thing. So that's really encouraging. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bly, please go ahead.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, thank you. So questions for you, Mr. Mayor, to the mover of the motion on two topics. One is the date by which the report will be completed, and then the second is staff liaison. So I'm curious on the first, under what condition would you suggest or would you anticipate we would extend the date or we would extend this working group's ongoing function beyond July 31st? If that was the case.
Yeah, so
Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. The circumstances could include these. One is we end up with another circulation of the virus that puts us back from recovery, that puts into some state of difficulty around us moving forward with ideas we may have come up with that make us as a council feel we have to either morph our plans or create some new plans at that time. And I believe that would be done, obviously, in complete cooperation and collaboration with staff. Another might be that we have found that there are certain sectors that we deal with, or certain elements of recovery that we want to tackle first. They are maybe the ones that are really top of mind and the most important or urgent from our point of view as a council jointly to focus on. But there may be other elements of recovery that we didn't deal with, but that we think these are important issues too. And so we've been successful at dealing with this many topics so far, but perhaps we want to deal with more. So there is a possibility to extend beyond the July deadline. This committee is bound by a reference within the I think it's actually in the charter that says that we have to end such a committee by the first day in November following the next election, when the councils change over. But right now, it is the end of July where we're expected to come up with a report.
Okay, great. And I that date's been moved up, and I had to have something before we go to summer break. And then my second question around staff liaisons. I wonder if you could explain, in the terms of reference, it says that the CCRC, so the staff liaison role will be to liaise with staff, that the work of the CCRC is appropriately aligned to staff's work. Could you just speak briefly about what exactly does that mean, and how the staff liaisons will work with different committees under the umbrella of the working group?
It's an excellent question, because appropriate could mean many different things. I think the importance here is that we are aligned in some basic ways, because obviously we, I think, as a council, want to be as helpful as possible to the process that staff are engaged in right now. And by the way, that's one reason why at our very first meeting, I thought to invite those who are involved in the COVID recovery from a staff perspective, those who are leading it, to give us some presentations so we understand their work, and if they make suggestions about what kinds of things we could do that would be helpful, that may be helpful to us as a group. So alignment is, I think, more than anything, to ensure that that our work is contributing in a positive way and in a unique way to the work already ongoing by staff.
Okay, that's helpful. I'll reserve the rest of my time. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, it's Councillor Dominato, and I just wanted to add to Councillor Carr's comments very briefly.
Okay.
To respond to Councillor Bly's question.
Okay. Councillor Dominato.
And it's just to add, just around the subject of the July date, I just want to add, I think that the terms of reference suggest a report back by the end of July as well. And I just want to clarify important nuance here is that if indeed over the next couple of weeks or there's discussions with stakeholders, partners, sector, industry, where we hear something that we think needs to be acted upon, it does not have to wait until some sort of report back at the end of July, because I think one of the biggest things I'm hearing from the public right now is that they're looking for action, they're looking for leadership. And so it's imperative that in terms of looking at those terms of reference, it's not interpreted that simply we will meet for 2.5 months and that there'll be a final report, because in fact, the whole point of this is to be iterative and nimble. And so there will be, if something comes up from a roundtable with small businesses or another area, and we go, oh, that is something we really need to be addressing immediately, then the committee could certainly identify that and flag that, and their motion could be moved for council. But I just want to flag that because that is one of the challenges as we've been dealing with obviously a number of motions this week that are time sensitive and urgent, and there's an urgency from the public's perspective as well as we are moving, as we have businesses reopening next week and the restart. So I just want to add that to the discussion.
Thank you so much. Councillor Dejanova, apparently you have a question?
No, I didn't want to interrupt Councillor Dominato, just a point of privilege that I have been able to connect online and I will be attending here via phone.
Okay, thanks. And great. So I don't have anybody else on the queue for questions. And again, we're in debate and decision. So Councillor Kirby-Yung, I've got you on the queue.
Maybe I could be added to the queue then, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Kirby-Yung. Yep,
Yes,
thanks, Councillor Dejanova. We have you on the list. About a minute and change, Councillor Kirby-Yung.
Yeah, I have an amendment, a simple amendment that I sent in further to the question that I raised earlier. If you would like to start an amendment.
Okay.
And it's very
Need it
simple.
seconded before I do that, but let's see what it is first.
Second.
We don't even know what it is first. Councillor Dejanova. And the clerk is pulling it up on screen.
I think it's been emailed around.
Yep, it's a public meeting though, so it'll be good to have it up on screen so people can see what it is. Just waiting for the clerks. There we go.
So just quickly reading that out for everybody's benefit, because it is a public meeting. It's a simple update to clause 4C to add additional language so that the clause would now read, the chair of the CCRC will rotate among council members over time and shall follow the established roster for deputy mayor, just for clarity on that process. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. And we have a seconder from Councillor Dejanova, so now I can move us over to, sorry, I'm going to go to the amendment queue now. And if anybody would like to speak to this, please put yourself on the amendment queue or ask through a point of privilege. Councillor Swanson, please go ahead.
So if this amendment passes, would this mean that if you didn't want to be the chair of the committee, that you would still have to be?
My sense, Councillor Swanson, is that that would be the case. If we're following the established practice of deputy mayor, that is something you can turn down. So I imagine that would apply here.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody else on this one? Okay, so I'll call a vote on this. All in favor of the amendment, please vote.
I'll
Or
require
opposed?
a vote of this, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor
Point of privilege.
Dejanova, how would you like to? Yes, how would you like to vote? Sorry, I didn't hear you there.
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, Councillor Weep.
Yeah, Councillor, could I have a vote assist too? Too many screens open. I'm so sorry. Voting.
That's okay. In favor, Councillor Weep. Clerk, is Councillor Weep on the call?
Yeah, I'll need a vote assist in favor.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's passed then unanimously, Council. Thank you so much. And we're back to the main queue. Please put yourself on the queue if you'd like to speak to this amended motion. Councillor Boyle, please go ahead. Up to 5 minutes.
Thanks. So I just wanted to, I guess, share thoughts that I have shared with a number of councillors, and in previous discussions on this committee, I continue to be sort of open to being convinced of the value of the committee and remain that way. I'm happy to see the shorter time frame proposed in this committee. I think that makes sense to be more focused in that way. I appreciate the desire from councillors to be hearing from experts and to be engaging in good and collaborative leadership. It's not clear to me how, particularly with a possibility of just 4 sessions, how we will hear from new voices and more voices that we aren't already hearing from. And I will just say largely one of the things I wrestle with is the balance of the amount of time on process versus the achieving the goals and outcomes in the committee, particularly as someone who has been listening to webinars, seeking out information from experts about what recovery looks like in a number of different areas. So I will, I guess, just say frankly, I am up for being involved in this committee, of course, if it's the will of council to do it. My plan, unless I'm otherwise convinced in the rest of this meeting, is just to abstain and continue to not block it, but sort of be a observer and participate. And I hope that it is really useful. I continue to be open and hopeful to that being the case. Just still kind of on the fence about being convinced of it being a good use of our collective time.
Thank you so much. On to Councillor Bly.
Yeah, thanks very much. I see that there may be another amendment coming, but assuming there isn't any other significant changes, I just would share my overall support for the working group. It probably has a similar tone to Councillor Boyles, and I've been in this process since its sort of inception, I would say, while we worked through the different options. And, you know, I think collectively we could probably say, I don't know, like 30 to 60, I don't know how many hours, but definitely more than 30 that I've been a part of, to create a committee that's going to convene for 8 hours. And I know I'm being a little maybe unreasonable in that, but I think we need to look at it through that lens and wear my small business hat where I did the past 2 decades. This doesn't sort of inspire confidence, just the time it takes to get. But I do appreciate the work of Councillor Carr and Councillor Dominato and the group as a whole to consider this, and of staff. And perhaps coming out of this, we really learn a lot about what happens when there is some crisis that hits the city as a whole, and how we establish. So maybe this is going to be really good work that we do, and, you know, heaven forbid we actually need a committee like this in the near future, but we sort of establish some sort of precedent, because I got to see how are we going to be offering values through this. And although I appreciate there's a very clear intent by the mover and the seconder of the motion, and again, all of the work that's gone into it, this is not, you know, we're 9 weeks into something that we're trying to respond to. So, you know, I hope that we surprise one another by honoring Appendix B that talks about rules of engagement. I think that's incredibly important, and hopefully that actually becomes the norm of our regular council and committees, to follow those 6 high-level rules of engagement: outcome-oriented, productive debate, respectful listening, staying on point and on time, sticking to the schedule, and jointly designing next steps. Sounds great. So I remain optimistic that we will glean some value from the time that we spend going through this exercise, but I just have to say that I don't want us to default to this working group as a way to respond to COVID entirely. And I have heard from the mover of the motion and others and staff that that's not going to be the case. And so that gives me reassurance to go ahead and support this work, and very much look forward to participating. And kudos to this council for working to get to this point, and look forward to the work that we will do, and then hopefully some benefits that we can land on for the betterment of everybody in the city. That's all from me. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Wiebe.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank the 2 movers of the motion. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that this is great for us to work, and I know it's been a long process, but I think that's how we're going to be in a post-COVID city, is that we're going to change our processes, look at different ways of doing business, be more collaborative, and ensure that we're working together and hearing and getting the best data. So I really appreciate this work and being able to bring in speakers in a different format, for us to have debate in a different format and really change the way governance is done. So I look forward, and I'm walking into this in a positive way, and I really appreciate the members for bringing it forward.
Thank you. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did forward the amendment that I had mentioned earlier, and I thank Councillor Kirby-Young for raising the issue and giving us pause to look at exactly what is required of us in terms of notice. So the changes to section 4E to remove 2 days notice and just have it as 6 days notice, advance public notice for each meeting.
Great, thanks. We have a seconder for that one.
Second.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Councillor Kirby-Young, thank you. We've got I put this on an amendment queue. Does anybody want to speak to this? Okay, if not, we can call a vote on this.
I'll need a vote assist.
Thanks. How would you like to vote, Councillor Carr?
In favor.
Okay, thanks.
Oh,
Right,
Mr. Mayor, I'll also need a vote assist, please. It's Councillor Dominato.
Yes, and how would you like to vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Boyle, Councillor DeGenova.
Thanks so much, Mr. Mayor. I'm just sending in.
Vote assist for you, Councillor DeGenova?
Thank you very much. Yes, in favor. I just wanted to see it on my email first.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Okay, that's passed. Thank you very much, Council. Back to the main queue. Councillor Carr, anything else?
No, I'm fine. I'll just wait to hear from the other councillors.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Fry?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I won't take too much time on this. I'm just grateful for staff to help out with creating these terms of reference, and of course to all the work that's gone into this, including Councillors Carr and Dominato putting this forward. Similar to Councillor Wiebe, I'm really excited about the possibilities that this might bring. I'm really excited about the opportunity for us as a council to bring in speakers and actually start driving some of these conversations that we'd like to have. But right now, as the process unfolds, we don't really have those options available to us as a council to bring in speakers unless they're speaking to a motion or speaking to a staff report. And at that point, they're really just limited in the amount of time they can speak. So I think, if anything, that's a really exciting new development for our process. And I'm really hopeful about how we can take this and maybe really expand on it and build better processes in that process. So happy to support this motion, and gratitude all around. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Councillor Kirby-Young, just a minute and a half.
Yeah, a couple of quick closing comments. I appreciate the spirit of where this is coming from, and I think that council needs to be seen to be taking leadership, be responsive to our community. I think timeliness and flexibility is really important. I did not have the opportunity to be heavily involved in the development of this and didn't have the experience of some of the values articulated in Appendix B, including productive debate, but I'm heartened to see these principles. And I think if that can be a positive legacy coming forward where we can have the opportunity to have more of that engagement as councillors, I think that would be a positive. I do want to stress I don't see this being the only mechanism, because there are things that are timely, such as the restaurant motion, just because it's top of mind. And the council was on it yesterday that 2 weeks between meetings, whatever, can be a lifetime in the life of an operator, for example, when we are dealing with sort of people's livelihood and when we're dealing with health issues or potentially social ones. So I think we're going to have to strike that balance, and I'm interested to see how this works and if there's any positive outcome in terms of a forum for council to hear from other groups on a regular basis. I'm most interested about that, but I'm not necessarily under the illusion that this is going to help us be more quick and more responsive to some of those kind of immediate things that come up, but perhaps try to frame some of the COVID response into more of a cohesive strategy. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Swanson.
Yeah, I'm kind of like Councillor Boyle. I really don't want it to get subsumed in a whole bunch of process stuff, although I appreciate all the work that people have put into this, especially Councillor Carr and Dominato. And actually, I have thought of some groups that I think it would be good to have come and speak to the committee about what we would do coming out of COVID. So I'm here for the next meetings to see how it goes, and I'm kind of a little bit skeptical, but I'll go along with it.
Thanks so much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and I'll just add a few comments as well and some reflections, because I do appreciate the feedback from around this virtual table around just wanting to ensure that this isn't mired in bureaucracy, and I can't stand bureaucracy, so trust me on that. I want us to be nimble and flexible, as Councillor Kirby-Yung indicated there. I do think that's really important, and I spoke to this earlier about how, at least from my perspective, I think when we're dealing with the public and different partner groups, organizations within the city, there are things that are time sensitive and have urgency to them, particularly in a period when you're in a pandemic and we're still in a state of declared state of emergency. And so that's really speaking to the response piece, which is ongoing and was led by the Emergency Operations Center. The focus of this is longer, I say medium to long term, in terms of focusing on recovery, and that hopefully will dovetail with some of the work that our staff are beginning to do as well. I think opportunity to hear speaker in a different manner. We've talked about presentations, but be also roundtables. It could be that we identify a cluster.
Sorry, you're fading out there, Councillor Dominato. Councillor Dominato, you faded out.
Can you hear me?
You faded out there, Councillor Dominato. We just last couple of sentences.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you
Hello?
faded out.
Okay.
We lost the last couple of sentences, so if you could repeat that.
Okay. I'm not sure what I said there, but I guess what I was suggesting is that there may be an opportunity through this to have roundtables with organizations from the same sector or representing the same organizations, or they have similar issues and want to inform the city's recovery process. And I think it's really important that we are poised to really build and support the local economy. It's often understated, and we don't often talk about that in the city, and yet I think it's actually come to the forefront in the last number of months, because we've been watching people lose their jobs and watching businesses shut and people struggling, and so I think that there needs to be really a laser focus on our small business community and broader community in terms of rebuilding the city and fostering resilience. And I think we could liken it a bit to the select standing committees that are struck in Victoria with the legislature, in terms of having either their multi-party committees that are focused on a problem, and they often will invite presentations from organizations as well as the public to feed into that dialogue as they're trying to address a complex policy problem. And so I would liken it to that in terms of the listening exercise, and I hope that it leads to some positive collaboration amongst councillors as well, and recognizing we also still have other tools in the toolbox to address issues. We do have regular council meetings to bring forward motions and things that are time sensitive. To me, this feels like a medium where we'll be able to engage organizations in dialogue and to use that to inform decision making going forward. So just wanted to add those comments.
Great, thank you. Councillor Dejanova, up to 5 minutes. Councillor Dejanova.
Thanks so much. Just taking myself off mute there.
Okay.
Just wanted to, can you hear me?
Yes, can.
Great, thanks. I forwarded over an amendment that I'm hoping will be considered.
Okay, I'll just wait for the clerk to pull that up on screen.
Thank you. I'm just hoping you might be able to help me there, Mr. Mayor, as I'm dealing with a smartphone here. If I did miss any punctuation in it, thanks.
Right, so the amendment is on screen.
Okay, and I'll read the
excuse me.
Sorry.
Yes, just wait a second. I'm checking with the clerk here. Just 1 second. I'm going to have to go on mute and before we proceed, just 1 second, please.
Okay.
Council, I'm just checking to see if this is consistent with the terms of reference with this for this meeting, and it'll just take me just working with the clerk here to understand this, and I will get back to you momentarily. Council, I'm going to have to ask you for a recess for 5 minutes, just because I guess just explaining for a second before we get there is that according to the terms of reference, there would be no motions coming out of this committee, but this amendment refers to motions coming out of this committee. So that is what I'm checking on, and we've got a motion on the floor. I'm just going to ask for Councillor Dejanova.
Yes, under Section 8, Mr. Mayor, and I don't have my procedure bylaw right in front of me. You'd said that motions would come out of this committee. This is about motions at council and standing committees that would possibly be referred to this committee for input. It's not about this committee having motions. It's about motions that would be referred to this committee. And I think it very clearly states that.
Thanks for that. I'm going to check with it, and we'll need a few minutes. So council will take a 5-minute recess and be back at 5 minutes to 5. Thank you.
Thanks.
and the ramifications of this proposed amendment. And what it means essentially would be that we would be, it is an order, and we would be restricting the ability of us, when we're sitting in council, to send anything to this committee, this COVID committee, unless by unanimous vote. So say, for example, a staff report came, and if we were going to try to refer it to this committee for discussion, it would require a unanimous vote rather than just a majority vote. So just want to, that's the interpretation of law for this motion. And so so Councillor DeGenova, you have this on the floor, and we would need a seconder.
Like to,
you still have the floor. Go ahead.
So I can speak to that before it's seconded?
No, if no one has seconded it yet, and you still have the floor, but I would call for a seconder before we, unless there's something else you want to add.
No, I just didn't want to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor, if you were calling for.
Go ahead, thanks. Yep.
Okay, thanks. So I'll explain it first, and then council can understand. I really want to say that I appreciate the work of Councillor Carr and Dominato on this, of our staff. I understand that Ms. Levitt has been, and her team has been very involved in moving this forward. I did want to say that what I really appreciated about this was it's very collaborative and it includes all of council. I understand that, there were a lot of discussions about how this would move forward. And although, and maybe every council member would have wanted something a little bit different, I'm sure that's sometimes how it always goes. I feel that this is pulling people together, council members together, in a way that we can hear from the public. I may have preferred sort of a task force model, or to hear more from people out in the community who might be able to bring different perspectives and have them report back to council. But to your point, Mr. Mayor, this would require unanimous consent of council at the time of the meeting, or as the clerks were to interpret that, to move something to the committee. And I think that that's important, that this shouldn't be used as a vehicle to, and it just concerns me. I'm not saying that it will be, but with unanimous consent, then no one's motion or resolution or recommendations or amendments can be sent to this committee as a vehicle for them to sit until July. And I trust that our staff don't put things on the agenda unless they're important and we need to deal with them at that time, or there's room on the agenda for that. So I'm not, I do have a concern that without having unanimous consent for moving this to committee, I think that staff wouldn't bring something to council. They would ask the committee to deal with it. But if a member motion of a councillor was to be moved or stalled, and put to this committee, and unfortunately, Mr. Mayor, I have sat on elected bodies where things like that have happened. I would hope that, in good faith, that this could be supported by council for those reasons. It would just offer me that extra comfort that really, just as the chair would rotate and everyone would have an opportunity, that everyone would have to agree if someone's motion wasn't dealt with at council or committee, but instead was moved to this committee. And I'm just concerned that that may happen, and this would help to alleviate my concerns. And then I could vote. I could vote to move this forward.
Okay, thank you very much. I've taken over as chair as the mayor has stepped out. We need a seconder for the amendment. Do we have a seconder? Calling one more time for a seconder for the amendment moved by Councillor DeGenova.
Second.
Second, Councillor Dominato. We have it on the floor. We'll move to an amendment queue. Please, councillors, put your names on for debate and decision. Questions? Councillor Fry, you're up.
Thanks, Chair Wiebe. I find this entirely unsupportable. Oh, sorry, was my mic on? Yeah, I can't support this amendment in any way. I think that to put the entire interest of this committee or the council at the whim of perhaps just one individual who decides to not consent to sending this to committee, I think that's not a good idea. I'd be consider it of something that was more reflective of a 2/3 majority even, but certainly not unanimous support. I just don't think that's a realistic proposal, and I think it may lend itself to more friction and divisiveness in that potential.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have anyone else? I see no one else on the queue. Oh, Councilor Dominato. Go ahead.
Thanks. I appreciate the intent. I'm struggling a little bit with unanimous, maybe on the heels of the councilors weren't extending past 10 p.m. We were unable to finish some urgent business. And so that is ultimately what happens when you have unanimous consent being prioritized around decision making. So I just want to say I'm struggling a little bit with that component, and I sort of need a moment to think about it in terms of, I guess in my mind, as we were evolving this conversation around the committee, it was to be a listening exercise and a place where we could convene stakeholders and sector representatives to learn and gain their insight on how we should focus on recovery. It wasn't really intended, at least in my mind, and maybe I have a different perspective, to be a place where we would be punting other business that's on council agendas. But maybe that's where there's maybe a different perspective. At least I certainly didn't think of it that way. I thought it was more of an engagement opportunity and listening opportunity and learning opportunity. I think that's how it's framed in the terms of reference versus being another body that we would refer motions and staff recommendations to. So anyways, maybe I'll wait to see if there's anyone else who has other comments on that. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. I see no one else on the queue.
Sorry, Chair Weeb.
Would you like to speak to your amendment?
I would, point of privilege, if you could add me to the list, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've just sent in an amendment to my amendment, and it's to strike the word unanimous and to include 2/3. As I understood that could be supported, I was hoping that maybe you'd allow me to speak to that.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the amendment to the amendment to strike unanimous and put in 2/3? Last call for a seconder. We have no one second the amendment to the amendment, so the amendment does not get put to the floor. We will go back to the amended motion. We'll go back to the amendment brought forward, the original amendment moved by Councillor Digenova.
Okay.
Chair Weeb?
Speak to that then?
Yes, Councillor Carr.
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm on a different queue just because I was doing presentations, but I'd like to be added to the queue to speak to this amendment.
Yes, you're up next. Go ahead, Councillor Carr.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I understand the intent, I believe, by Councillor Digenova here, but I cannot support it. And I can't support it because really of the point that was raised by Councillor Dominato, which is receiving unanimity is often very difficult. And we saw that it was problematic in terms of our ability to extend our meeting last night to finish very crucial business. I also feel that we need to make sure that the new endeavors we pursue as a council do fit within the procedure bylaw. So I love the other terms that we've got of agreement, but the procedure bylaw is our basic tool for process. And I worry that this would actually run, at least in intent, very much counter to the normal decision making of council, which is by simple majority referring items to other meetings or other processes. So I feel I cannot go with something that is fundamentally different in its process than the procedure bylaw enables us to do.
Thank you. Councillor DiGenova.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wiebe, Chair Wiebe. I did try. I would have thought that I might have gotten a seconder, but I didn't because I did try and be collaborative on this. But I understood this entire committee was about being collaborative and consensus and agreement. And it was the first person who spoke to this amendment had said, that there was concern. I actually was hoping that this would help to alleviate some of the concerns that I have, that this actually could create more work and be a place where things are moved to. That's my concern, is that there are some things that are moved off to this committee. Some motions may move forward right away at council that have to do with COVID, and others will be referred to this committee, and then we'll be stuck in a report. And that's my concern. And considering we're being asked to vote on terms of reference that only 2 councillors have really been involved in creating, I had thought that this amendment kind of was quite collaborative and brought it to a place where I would hope that if someone's motion was going to be moved to this committee, specifically this committee, I'm not saying to all committees or to staff, I would just hope that that would be something that we could find agreement on, just like the 10 p.m. deadline requires unanimous consent. There's a reason some things require unanimous consent, and I think that we're in extraordinary circumstances and extraordinary times. And when I speak to the main motion, I have to question, do we have the capacity right now? Do we have the time? And to Councillor Swanson's point, will people even be able to access this committee? For those reasons, this was just to add that comfort that all of council would support what is going to be considered at this committee, considering all of council is involved in this committee. Thanks.
Thank you. Seeing no one else on the queue to speak, we will call a vote on the amendment moved by Councillor DiGenova.
Mr. Chair, I will need a vote assist on this.
Okay. How would you like to vote?
In opposition.
In opposition? Okay. Anyone else need a vote assist?
I do. Councillor DiGenova, I'll be voting in favor.
Okay. DiGenova in favor. Clerk, I cannot see the voting screen, so when it's finished, perfect. So we have Councillor DiGenova in favor. In opposition, Councillor Carr, Councillor Fry, Councillor Swanson, Councillor Hardwick, Councillor Wiebe, Councillor Boyle, Councillor Dominato, Councillor Bly, and Councillor Kirby-Yung. The amendment fails. We'll go back to the amended main motion. Would anyone like to speak to the amended main motion?
Councillor
DiGenova, you have 56 seconds left, DiGenova. Go ahead.
Now, all of my time was spent on my amendment, so I'm not sure how I'd only have 50 seconds left.
You have 56 left on the main one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to ask for that to be stopped and a point of parliamentary procedure.
It is stopped right now, and it's your time that you spoke.
Thank you very much, Chair Wiebe. I just wanted to note that I'm not looking to stall the meeting, but all I did was ask for amendment to be considered, and I would have assumed that we would have been moved to amendment queue. I know that the mayor took a very long recess himself, which I supported. I offered to move that recess. However, if that ate into any of my time and the timer wasn't turned off, I hope that you would consult with the clerk on that.
Okay, the clerk's been managing the time, and it looks to be correct.
Okay.
And all this time is not gone. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not sure. I'm still considering how I might vote on this because I feel that this hasn't been all that collaborative of a process. I appreciate the work that staff have put into this, but I also am concerned about the work that may go into this. And I really do agree with Councillor Swanson and kind of about this the access that there may be to this committee? And will people be able to really, will we be able to hear from everyone who truly is affected in the same way that we could from a task force? So I'm considering this carefully, and at best I can abstain, and I may not vote in favor because I'm a little bit concerned. But again, as another counselor said, I will participate because just like every one of you, I think we're already doing this. So we are already doing this in our own way. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Hardwick.
Sorry, that's a holdover.
Well, the Councillor Carr to close out the motion.
Thanks so much, Chair Wiebe. First of all, I really want to thank staff who have put a lot of effort into this and their openness around working to establish this committee, which has been a great deal of time on the part of Karen Levitt, Alex Popovich in particular, Anita Zenker, and thank you for that work, and Lisa Dominato for joining me and working with them. And I think we would all agree it was actually an incredibly collaborative, very idea-generating process around the terms of engagement, and I think it bodes well for the whole committee's work. I really want to thank also all of the councillors who did provide input on this over a long period of time since the idea first came up and the motion came forward and was passed. It is rather frustrating sometimes to see how long things take, and hopefully this committee actually will be nimble, as many people have stated they would like it to be, because the work is, in my mind, so very important. I mean, the people of the city are looking to us for leadership in a COVID recovery that does well by all the people who live here, by the business who operate, by those who are in the most vulnerable of situations, by the people who want the city to be and to emerge even better as a city than we've been in the past. So my hope is that we will be achieving, with period of time being fairly short, at least some very important and unique contributions to COVID recovery to have positive effect. And I look forward to working with you all.
Thank you very much. Seeing no one else on the speakers list, we will call a motion as amended on the screen.
Need a vote assist?
Vote assist, Councillor Carr.
In favor?
Vote assist, Councillor Digenova. Councillor Digenova, do you need vote assist?
Chair Wiebe, I think we've lost her connection. Maybe we'll give her a call if we can hold on for a second.
Yes, we may.
Sure, we have a message from Councilor DeGenova saying that she had to leave the meeting, so I think we can proceed with the vote.
Okay, we'll continue to proceed with the vote. That passes unanimously with Councillor Boyle and Kirby Young abstaining, and Councillor DeGenova and the mayor absent for the vote. As that is the last item of business, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
Councillor Hardwick and
Yes.
Second,
yes.
Councillor Carr.
Second, Councillor Carr. All in favor, say yay.
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 Yay!
Yay.
All opposed,
Yay.
say nay. The meeting has been adjourned. Thank you so much. Enjoy the
Thank you.
long
Bye,
weekend.
everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good long weekend, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.